Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen Toope, and I have the honor to serve as the Vice-Chancellor of this great university, and I'm really thrilled to be here to celebrate yet another achievement in the life of Bill Janeway. There are just so many of those achievements. We all have followed that life over many years, some of us, and know the accomplishments. I could talk about all sorts of things that Bill has done for Cambridge, both as a colleague and as a tremendous benefactor, but I'm not going to do that because this is about Bill's book. And I actually do want to say a few things about the book, which I found both chastening and ultimately, I'm happy to say, inspiring. Bill, as you know, talks about what he calls the three-player game: the role of the state, the market economy, and financial capitalism in creating and sustaining an innovation economy. And what I was inspired by, especially from, if I may say, a person who grew up in the United States, like Bill, was that there is an acceptance and indeed a delight, if I may put it that way, of the role of public authority, the state, in ensuring that our economy can actually function in a healthy way. Indeed, one of his primary arguments is that the state is necessary to the effective functioning of an innovation economy because it provides a predictable regulatory environment. It, of course, directs investment to counteract down cycles, and most importantly, it directly invests in research and development, particularly, I might say, in great universities. And he gives the example of the emergence of telecommunications, communications technologies after the Second World War as an example of that hugely important set of investments for an innovation economy. But he then goes on to talk about what he sees, if I may say, as a huge risk today. And that risk is one that I think many of us will have noted, but I think that you capture so clearly that risk. And it is that the United States has withdrawn from the needed building up of the new innovation economy, and that is a low carbon economy. There is no energy equivalent of DARPA, for example. What's more, as Bill emphasizes, President Trump has, by withdrawing from the Paris Accord, quotes, I love this phrase, imposed an existential negative externality on the world. I think that's exactly right. Meanwhile, China rises apace and actively seeks out global leadership, particularly in the new innovation economy. And that connects to another great book produced by a Cambridge friend and colleague, David Runciman, who's here, How Democracy Ends. David's answer, forgive me, David, in essence is not with a bang, but a whimper. Through disengagement, not coups, through distraction, not intention. It struck me that Bill's description of the USA withdrawing from the field on the new green innovation economy is another form of distraction and disengagement, which supports David's thesis. But I am happy to conclude by noting that Bill is an optimist. He's not a dismal scientist, despite his training. Of course, that's because he really connected to the work of Keynes while a student here at this university. So we're very fortunate, I think, then, to have at Cambridge a clear role ahead for all of us in the face of this disengagement and distraction. And it's the role that Keynes pointed and that Bill both opens and concludes his book with this key idea. And that is, there still is a place, and it's a hugely important place, for the gradual encroachment of ideas. We need good ideas, powerful ideas, to resist disengagement, to resist distraction. I think Bill's pointed to some of those ideas, and we should be very grateful. Thank you very much, Bill.
So thanks very much. My name is Chris Harrison. I'm the Publishing Director for the Humanities and Social Sciences Group at Cambridge University Press. And in a former existence, I was the economics editor and had the privilege of being Bill's editor for the first outing of doing Capitalism. So I'm just going to say a very few words, reflecting a little bit on working with Bill, but also just a few thank yous for the various people and institutions who've made this event possible. First of all, to thank our hosts, Pembroke College, for providing this really nice venue. Then a lot of institutions have worked together for this, and as anybody who knows the heavily networked world of Bill Janeway, that's no surprise that it's so many institutions involved. The Cambridge Economics Faculty, the Cambridge INET Institute, and a particular thank you to Marion, who along with my colleague Ellie has done most of the heavy lifting, I think, for the event this evening. The Cambridge Endowment for Research and Finance, the Judge Business School, and lastly Cambridge's newest, I believe, academic institute, the new Institute for Public Policy. So thank you to all of those. This is an exchange of ideas, but it's also a book launch here, so I'm happy to see a lot of people have already taken the opportunity to get a personally signed copy from Bill there, and all copies are available at a 20% discount. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. So just a few words about sort of working with Bill, and say one of the great privileges of a job working as an editor at a place like Cambridge University Press is you get to meet an awful lot of smart and interesting people, and you feel this phrase of lifelong learning is something which you can sort of do quite naturally as you kind of meet these people. But I have to say that all the people I've met and worked with, very few come smarter or more fun to work with than Bill. As I said, when I first worked with Bill, I was coming to the end of a really enjoyable time working as an economics editor, but I did harbour a secret. I'm trained as a historian, and I had a rare sort of complaint that I think few economists suffer from, but I did suffer from history envy. Whilst I was very proud of the kind of books we published on sort of dynamic, stochastic, general equilibrium modelling and so forth, it was a real pleasure to work with Bill and on a book which I could truthfully say I understood. And as we've heard earlier, it's a book which is just so full of ideas from all sorts of different disciplines. There's economic history in there, there's political economy in there, there's finance, there's history of economic thought, theories of innovation. And all this is mixed together with a really nice blend of sort of Bill's personal experiences of how he sort of navigated this sort of really kind of complicated world with all these actors. And so I feel that I'm sort of attending at a bit of a masterclass, working with somebody who has this reputation of being the sort of the theorist practitioner. And as a Vice-Chancellor was saying, something which really kind of shouts out from the book is this interaction of theory and practice, that you're never, on reading any of this book, you're never tempted to ask that question, which I know sometimes are reading some papers about so what. It's really kind of, it's clear this is really important stuff. So finally, I should say that when Bill came and talked to my successor about the idea of doing a second edition, I have to confess I was a little bit sceptical about that, and well, is this really the kind of book which we should be doing a new edition of? But then the more I thought about it and heard Bill's ideas and the amount of work and revision that's gone into it, I was kind of fully won over. Bill's first book was published in 2012 in the shadow of an event which very few people saw coming, the financial crisis. And without indulging in too much hyperbole, I think it's true to say that the world in 2018 is a very different world already to the world of 2012. And a lot of these things which have happened since publication, the first edition, obviously feature largely in this new book. So the rise of the gig sharing platform economies, the way in which some really kind of big fundamental questions are now making sort of the academic bestseller lists around sort of, kind of inequality, the kind of whether productivity's come to an end and so forth. People are reading Marx again and sort of not feeling too embarrassed about it. we're seeing the kind of the rise of power of data and the kind of realizing kind of the importance of what goes wrong with that. And then associated with all these things, the rise of populism and the backlash of globalization. So just as I think the first edition was written with the kind of the shadow of the financial crisis looming kind of large over it, I sense very strongly that the second edition is written very much with the shadow of kind of two words which you shouldn't mention in polite society, Brexit and Trump, written all over it. And so the last chapter is a bit gloomy. It is, for reasons we've just heard. But, and Bill does sound alarm bells appropriately, but I'd also like to end on the same comment as the Vice-Chancellor, that Bill comments in the book that as a venture capitalist, you have to be an optimist. So I look forward to coming together in 6 years' time and to celebrate the publication of the third edition and another series of events which we haven't predicted, can't predict, and that Bill will give us sort of sage commentary on. So thank you, Bill. It's been a privilege working with you, and I hope everybody enjoys this evening. Thank you.
Well, after all that, there's not much left to say. So for the files, I'll have my own version of what Stephen so graciously and accurately rendered of the core messages of the book and what Chris then added to. I would only just take 2 minutes, time me, to say, okay, so why did you really go back and chew this cabbage all over again? And yes, Brexit and Trump had an enormous amount to do with it, but there was a bigger phenomenon, and that was this dialectical paradox. We've heard that we are allowed to read Marx again, or at least, or maybe even Hegel. The digital revolution was spawned in all its particulars by the American state. The funding of all aspects of it, the first customer for everything from silicon to software, and for the use of what became the internet was the American Defense Department. Over the last 5 years, it's become clear that the digital revolution no longer needs any support or subsidy from the state. On the contrary, it's attacking the authority of the state, not just the American state. We just rode an Uber in Paris, don't report us. The authority of the state around the world. And at that moment, it's when we see the abdication of the American state broadly, first and most importantly, and this is also true in this country, from taking responsibility for the economic and social and human consequences of the digital revolution. Most importantly, the achievement of the algorithmic labor market, which offers the possibility of creating Marx's reserve army of labor, callable on demand and payable a pittance. And that combination of what had been in the first edition essentially a celebration of how that three-player game could generate a constructive outcome with the potential, not without pain, loss, and suffering along the way, and not without radically disruptive distributional consequences, even as the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution did in prior generations. But it was, at its core, there was a kind of celebratory note. And this note here, the tone here, is very different. And it reflects that inversion, the great reversal in the relationship between the digital revolution and the state, which we live every day. I do myself want to thank so many people here, above all my colleagues in the economics faculty. We came over in 2006 expecting to be here for a couple of years. My wife Wesley became a geneticist. The global financial crisis, from my perspective, made economics a really interesting subject again. And I found a home amongst colleagues who have been contributing to the upbeat tone and note of the conclusion of the book on the power of ideas and the potential that the new ideas, the new economic thinking, will frame policy debates over a generation, not immediately, and offer the potential that it will not only be the Chinese who have the opportunity to learn if they can exercise creative and innovative leadership at the frontier, but perhaps Europe and the US as well. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate the turnout and hope you enjoy the book. I must just add one final note. It is so appropriate that we're here in the old library of Pembroke, where indeed, as a Marshall Scholar, I had the enormous privilege of immersing myself in the economics of Keynes amongst Keynes's immediate students. So it's so good to be back at Pembroke, where I belong.